Hi, and welcome to Voices of Esalen. I'm Sam Stern. Today we take a small step back in time and speak with our former executive chef, Phillip Burrus. Phillip and I spoke this spring right before he and his wife, Isabel, were about to head to Spain to begin a new life, and we proceeded to debrief a decade's worth of his service to Esalen. Phillip has such an impressive breadth of knowledge, not only concerning food and the culture surrounding it, but sustainability, teaching, land stewardship, and much more. There's a great deal of thoughtfulness to this guy, and if you ever wondered what went on behind closed doors at one of the best healthy kitchens in California, I think this interview will give you just what you're looking for. Please enjoy my conversation with Phillip Burrus. Phillip, thank you for joining us on Voices of Esalen.
Thanks so much for having me. It's an honor.
You came to Esalen 10 years ago from CIA, the Culinary Institute of the Arts. So I'm curious, what first drew you to come to Esalen?
I had visited Big Sur many times in my teenage years, in my 20s, and I had always been really struck by the beauty of Big Sur and a little mystified as far as, who lives here, where are they? Because you can't really see what's going on in Big Sur other than that it's breathtaking. And I was doing a search of places where I could do my internship from the culinary program, and Esalen was one of the potential sites. And so it was mostly the Big Sur location that got me interested. And then as I read a little bit on the website, I felt equal parts intrigued and a little confused at what I might be getting into, and I scheduled a bunch of interviews in California over the Christmas holiday that year to figure out where to go. All the other places I looked at were really competitive, fine dining, Michelin starred kind of places, and Esalen was the last interview that I had, and I drove down here directly from the French Laundry in Napa, and when I arrived, I sat down with the kitchen manager and I told her where I'd just come from, and she said, "Oh yeah, we're a lot like the French Laundry," which is not true at all. But yeah, so I think I came for the Big Sur experience and then realized as soon as I walked into Esalen that there was something really special going on.
Did you have a kind of a background in any of the, yoga, psychic visions?
Yeah, definitely. I was coming mostly from St. Louis, so in the Midwest, all of that's there, but harder to find. It's not quite as, we're not steeped in it the way we are in California, but definitely that was my, that was the sort of community that I was around in St. Louis.
And then CIA is in New York?
Yeah, it's in the Hudson Valley, and it's really beautiful up there. There's farms everywhere, and lots of, people are really crazy about food, so it's kind of a paradise for food. And then here is too. I think it's two of the best places for playing with food. Mm. Yeah. So they brought you in as a chef, or they brought you in to work in the kitchen? Yeah, my first stay here was for a 5-month internship in the middle of that program, and I overstayed the 5 months by a few extra months because I was just having too much fun. So I decided to delay going back to New York, and then I went back and finished that program. And when I was heading back to California, the kitchen manager, my predecessor, called and said they had a job opening, and I was unsure whether I wanted to jump right back in because I know how sort of all-consuming this place is. So I decided to take that position, but also work up the road at Post Ranch, where I could do a little more of the fine dining, kind of focused, smaller quantities. And so I did both for the better part of a year, but after a while I was very tired. It was really long days, and I realized I would have to let go of one of them, and so I just went all in at Esalen at that point. So
what were your impressions of Esalen in terms of when you started working? I imagine one of the things that's attractive about working here is that you're able to source some of your food from the garden that's grown here.
Definitely. That's a dream for sure. The movement that's really pairing chefs and restaurants with farms. It was definitely happening then, and it's gotten, even more common now. But to have the produce, just feet from the kitchen and coming in every single morning, we have the opportunity to sometimes serve things that are literally straight out of the ground, no refrigeration. And money cannot buy that type of food, the energy it has, and the pristine condition. It's a really special thing. So that was definitely one of the major draws, was knowing that was happening here.
I know that you've worked with Gestalt here as a leader. I'm not exactly sure to what extent, although you could tell me. And I wanted to ask whether the communication style and the Gestalt processing was also an attraction for you from the start.
It definitely was. I didn't know really the meaning of Gestalt, the way it's applied here, until I arrived. And I think there's a lot of different understandings of what that means in this context. For me, it's really, I think it's sort of the awareness practice that's used pretty widely here at Esalen and then applied in a variety of contexts. So there's a communication style that's really informed by the Gestalt awareness practice that we sort of use as our lingua franca. And then there's also a lot of the personal work that I've been able to do in the time I've been here, and in the conflict resolution, and in the just, learning more about each other and learning more about our my impact on the people around me. And I was interested and very, also not super informed. But I had a therapist that I was seeing in New York, and right before I came out here, I told him I might be going to Esalen, and he just lit up. He got really excited and said, if you can do that, do it, because you can get, a decade worth of talk therapy in a couple months in an environment like that. So that definitely got me interested.
Was that true?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, it's around the clock here.
I imagine it must be pretty different than, I don't know that much about kitchens. I've read Kitchen Confidential and watched the TV shows and stuff like that. But what I understand from that book and those TV shows is that it can be pretty brutal in terms of communication in kitchens.
Definitely, yeah. The communication in normal kitchens is very truncated, super brusque, and maybe abrasive. There's a real macho culture in a lot of kitchens, and that's been changing over the last 10 years for sure. But yeah, militaristic and very results driven. I think one of the very common expectations in professional kitchens is that you just leave everything at the door. When you come in there, you're just a machine, and couldn't be more different than how we approach it here. The work is similar. The demands, what we need to produce is similar, but we go about it in a pretty radically different way.
Okay, could you tell us what the different way is?
We spend a lot of our time and our bandwidth on learning, how each of us is showing up that day, and what's each individual's desires and needs and concerns, and really turning towards everything that's happening in this constellation of people, whether it's interpersonal conflict or physical needs or limitations, or someone who's really curious about a certain thing and hoping they can get involved in it. Our time together in the kitchen is really us supporting these different people on their different paths and supporting them to be here and explore what they came to learn. And then we're also making food for everybody else in the process.
Is there time outside of the kitchen for the people who work there to kind of sort out their issues and whatnot? They're not like chopping beets at the same time?
Yeah, we try to make as much time for that as possible. So, each shift will carve out a bit of time where we can either leave the workspace or gather around, one of the tables in the kitchen and spend a little time just checking in with each other and sort of sharing, again, what sort of support people need and what's going on. And then we also get together once a week for 2 hours in, at Esalen, there's a lot of time spent sitting in circles with different constellations of people and again, learning about each other and just sort of putting our experience into the space and seeing how it affects other people. I think that there's the sort of encounter stuff that was happening here a long time ago has carried on a bit into how the community, how we sort of team build and learn about each other. So yeah, we spend some time each week doing that also. It's really amazing. In the time I've been here, I've known, there's been some people who have come here and learned a lot of cooking skills and went on to cook professionally. There's many more who came and they were therapists in training. And so the time they spent in the Esalen kitchen was time learning this style of facilitation and this style of communicating and holding space for people. And the ones I've stayed in touch with, they're doing that in cities and in clinics up in the Bay Area and all over the country. And I think that's a really special thing that we get to experience each other that way while we're at work.
Do you feel like you kind of have to be part facilitator in your role as executive chef at Esalen? Definitely,
yeah, for sure. I think that's what I've learned here. That's been the most impactful is that the aspects of that skill set are what I'm really grateful for, and I don't think I would have. I can't imagine having been able to develop those skills in another kitchen. It's just not. There isn't enough time and space, and it's not prioritized.
Yeah.
In restaurant kitchens. So, yeah, having that experience has been really wonderful. When I do work outside of Esalen, there's some events where a lot of crews are thrown together on like benefit events and fundraisers, or if I'm teaching or working events for clients and stuff. That's the thing that people always share with me, is that I have a sort of superhuman level of patience and presence and ability to tolerate the chaos around me.
Uh-huh.
And I think that's really something that is cultivated here, the sort of non-attachment to outcomes and holding space for the humans that are around us and what's happening in the moment, the presence. I love that.
Do you have any specific self-care techniques that you use that center you, that enable you to do a difficult job but still retain an attitude of non-attachment?
That's one place that I need to continue to develop, for sure. I pretty much just go until I crash. But in the last couple of years, I've really fallen in love with swimming, and I find that being underwater is, we spend a lot of time here working on being in the body and following the breath and really being present in the moment. And I find that that's underwater. There's no other way to be. It's immediate. That is how I sort of center lately. Is I just swim a little bit, go back to work, and that helps a lot, for sure.
So I wanted to ask you a little bit about the workshop that I've seen you teaching from afar.
Yeah, it's called Farmstead Traditions for the Contemporary Kitchen. And what I'm doing in there is basically introducing people to a traditional cooking and preserving techniques that would be found on a farmstead. It's really, I was inspired by traveling. Well, I think originally where I got the bug for that was when I was in my early 20s. I spent a year in Eugene, Oregon, and I was living on a little suburban street, and it was all these college kids living on this street. And I planted a little raised bed garden in the backyard, and I was growing a bunch of, tomatoes and peppers and stuff. And the neighbors started coming over. On Sundays, I would have a little barbecue and, play around with food from the garden. And all these college kids would tell me, my dad's a fisherman, my parents have a farm, and they would start showing up with all this produce. And eventually they were rolling in with these, huge, like ice chest off the boats, just packed with sweet corn and tomatoes and herbs, and they would bring a whole salmon or a whole mackerel, and So we had this kind of supper club on Sundays that got pretty big. And the thing I kept hearing was that, my parents are, from these kids, they would say, my parents are just so happy that someone's eating this food, and that we're interested in it. And sometimes the parents would pop by and, take photos of what we were doing. And so, it struck me that, there really is, there's a disconnect between kind of food in its whole form and what most of us are used to working with and cooking at home. And so this workshop's really, it's helping people get inspired about how to deal with sort of the feast or famine that happens if you are either gardening at home or even shopping at the farmer's market. They tend to sell things in these really big bunches that are hard to eat in one sitting. And so figuring out what to do with that, arm-sized bunch of herbs or the carrots that are, just blowing up at the farmer's market. And anyone who's gardened knows that at some point you're going to have all this squash and you have to figure out what to do, or all the tomatoes are ripe at the same time. So, there was that experience, and then traveling around and seeing, places where they're still really connected to their traditional agriculture. And the place that inspired me the most was Austria. They've been so protective of their traditional agriculture, and there's still these functioning farmsteads all over, especially in the Tyrolean Alps. And it's really wonderful. There will be a community with, each farm is somewhat self-sustaining, but that's not the point. Everyone has their specialties and their stuff that they're really known for in the community, and then they're all just swapping everything. So if your orchard's not as extensive as your neighbor, then you focus on grains and milling and or animals, and then the neighbor has the orchard. And that's kind of the plan for that workshop, is we explore some we'll brine and cure and smoke and pickle and ferment and can and sun dry and just play around with all the stuff from our garden and whatever's in season from the area too. I like to tell everyone this is the original convenience food. If you have a larder or a pantry at home that has a few of these items, then you can add these things to whatever's really abundant in that moment. So as you're cooking through the seasons, it's really lovely to have something that you spent a little time on that's, kind of packaged up and beautiful, and it's a little time capsule from last year or a few months ago. And when people come over, it's really exciting to pull something like that out and share it with them. And so I get emails all the time from people who've taken the class, and they'll show me what they worked on and how they decided to feature it later on. And I think it's a fun set of tricks to show people, because these are simple things that can be pretty intimidating.
Do you have any favorite books that you recommend for fermentations or?
Yeah, definitely. For fermenting, I think a really good a book to get people interested and inspired is Wild Fermentation by Sander Katz. And once you start doing it, you'll find that some things are actually easier and simpler than are described in that book. So I think
I love that book.
Yeah.
He is absolutely amazing.
Yeah, totally. I've seen him a few times at different fermentation festivals, and there's actually a pickle festival in downtown in Manhattan every fall that he's a big star at. And then there's one up in Sonoma too. And
now he lives on a pretty wild commune in Tennessee, right?
That's what I've heard, yeah. But yeah, he's passionate. I mean, he can get a crowd really worked up over pickles and sauerkraut, which is, that's a special skill to have. But yeah, that book is great. And then there was a follow-up to the original Wild Fermentation book too that I think that's also great. That's pretty much how I was doing everything, was the way that he described for a long time. And then as I started meeting people, I saw how the Austrians were making the sauerkraut, which was simpler and more foolproof. And then I saw how some Korean Americans were doing the kimchi, and realizing, actually there's some shortcuts and there's some ways to really demystify it even further.
I've noticed a lot of increase in fermentations available in the lodge.
Yeah, that's something that our goal is to have some cultured vegetables at every meal, and to have a little variety of them. I'd love it if people would, get really turned on and excited by that, especially folks who haven't tried it. So yeah, we have the basics bar in the lodge, which the intention there, it's new. We're still kind of dialing it in, but the intention is to always have some cultured vegetables and some sprouted stuff and some, featured items from the garden and other things that you can put together to have a really live food.
There's been bone broth.
Yeah, and bone
too,
broth
which is really
yeah.
fun. It's kind of like the trendy,
Indeed.
great.
Definitely. Yep.
What do you think surprises most people about working in the Esalen kitchen?
I guess one thing that constantly surprises people is how busy we are, for sure. Until you've experienced preparing food on the scale that we do, we measure ingredients in buckets, and everything that we assemble, we do hundreds of times in a row. So the volume, if you look at the meal that's on offer and you imagine cooking it for a small crowd, it seems like, oh, how hard can it be? But cooking it for a really huge crowd, yeah, it's just busy. There's a lot of people sharing the space and doing different things. People are moving at different speeds and focused in different ways, and all of it has to be choreographed so that we're budgeting the available space and equipment and time, and also that we have the right people on the right tasks, So there's a real high level of energy and intention. We're in constant motion. Yeah, I think that is something that surprises people. And just how many dishes we have to do,
That's part of it, too.
Yeah, it never ends.
That's actually one thing that I really appreciate about living at Esalen is that I don't have to do dishes.
Mm-hmm.
It's like kind of magic. And I, obviously appreciate getting 3 meals a day when I do eat here.
Yeah.
But there's somebody doing it.
Indeed. Yeah, there's wave after wave of dishes. And that's one of the places where we, each month we always have the opportunity to, step into the pond is where we do the dishes and explain, at times it'll just get buried in dishes. And if it's early in the month and the students in there are pretty new, it's easy to get really freaked out and think we're never going to be done with these dishes. And it happens every time. So we get to explain that, whether there's 1,000 dishes or 2 dishes, you're still going to wash them one at a time. And at some point you'll be done. So just wash one dish and then wash the next dish. And there's some sort of a life lesson in there. There's got to be, just we're going to do the same thing regardless. And just kind of keep the faith, and at some point it'll be done.
What do you think Esalen's role is moving forward? Like what with the demands of the planet and things being harder to source, what is Esalen's role moving forward in terms of sustainability? It's
a really good question. I think ideally this is something that we talk about a lot, and the thing about food philosophies is everyone's an expert on what is good for them, and to a certain extent what's good for the planet too. So there's so many opinions and there's so many different value systems and belief systems around food. It is hard to unite a large community around one particular food philosophy. If I had my way, I think that situated as we are, having a on-site farm and garden is just, that's a really amazing and unique resource to have. And then also just where we're located on the central coast of California, where there's so much produce right here. I think what I like is preparing a plant-based diet that's very seasonal and that is focused in the local food movement can get a little confusing at times, but really just food that is grown in the community, that's in season at this time and is fresh. Ideally, we're helping people who are close by, who are cultivating this food, to be able to continue to do it in a sustainable way. When you're buying a lot of food the way we do, we can make a really positive impact. We're sort of voting with our budget in a way. there has been times where we've been able to ask certain purveyors to change a little something for us so that we could feel better about it, and they respond to those things, and we've been able to play a pretty big role in keeping some folks in business that we really believed in. And so I think a plant-based diet where we very judiciously use animal products that are really humanely and sustainably and ethically raised. I personally prefer to use the animal products more to season plants and grains, vegetables and grains. I like to, and this is something in the workshop too, there's this idea that, if we invest the time in growing the produce, or if we invest the time in raising the animal, and it's something that we've really shared some time and intention, we're going to value it at a much higher level. With the animal products too, like I think one of the things that I really champion is curing and preserving. So smoked salmon or a Spanish ham or some cured meats and seafoods, because they have so much flavor that you can use them in really small quantities. And so you find something that is sustainably and ethically harvested or produced, and then you spend a little time with it and you engage in this sort of alchemy, and then there's something that is shelf stable, super highly flavored, and that way when there is this big pile of collard greens, we have something special in the pantry that we can add to it, and hopefully eat more collard greens than we would otherwise. So it's this balance that at any time of the year there's going to be a whole lot of something, and hopefully a little bit of this precious thing that's either just leaving the season or just coming on, or something that we put up a while ago. And so that this there can be this little dance where we're always combining that which is abundant with that which is highly valued and precious, and that's very satiating too. When there's those elements coming together in a meal, I think I know I personally am likely to feel very satiated. I feel satisfied, but also sort of enriched by the experience. That's what I would like producing food, cooking and eating to be like for as many people as possible. A little less automatic, a little less compulsive, more mindful. And
What is your favorite meal to cook at Esalen? What could people look forward to?
Well, for one, I don't cook much anymore, so when I do, it's usually because somebody was stuck on the other side of a mudslide or something like that.
Occupational hazards of working in Big Sur.
Indeed. There's some meals that I think just really fit this place and just like feel really good. There's so many I like for different reasons. I think usually a couple of times a month we will have a lunch that is soup and salad lunch, and it sounds really humble, but what we do is we ask the farm and garden. A lot of times they have really nice, beautiful, pristine produce that's either sort of on the young side or they planted a small amount to see how it would do. So there will be items that we don't really have in a large quantity, so they need to be showcased, in a certain way. And so we'll ask them to bring in a whole bunch of that stuff, and we'll have a big spread with lots of different lettuces and salad greens, and if it's summertime, maybe some peppers and some cherry tomatoes and some fennel and carrots and radishes, and we'll put out some of the cultured vegetables and then make a few pots of just really hearty, lovely soup, and let people sort of combine their own ideal meal out of this sort of big, spread of stuff from the garden. And we'll add, some crunchy stuff and sprouty stuff and, little flavorful bits. But I like that because when I look around in the lodge, everyone's plate is totally different, which is pretty cool. For the dinners, I like to make Persian food when I can, with what's grown in our garden and then what our neighbors are producing and what's available really just here in Big Sur. I can make a really amazing, a very like rich and sort of decadent and inspiring, like a Persian jeweled rice. It's this steamed rice that has this crispy bottom, and it's got all dried fruit and nuts in it and saffron, and then a stew with some vegetables and some greens, and the stew's thickened with walnuts, and it has some pomegranate in there. So in the fall, that's a meal that is really exciting to make here, just because everything's right here. It feels right.
So I know that you're moving to Spain with your lovely wife soon, and I'm curious, what's interesting or attractive about the food landscape in Spain, and where will you be going?
We're leaving really soon, and we'll be in Madrid for a month or so to kind of finish out the winter, and then we're moving to Ibiza, so we're gonna go there kind of as the winter breaks and be there through the spring. And yeah, we're going there primarily for the swimming, for the daily dip in the Mediterranean.
Yeah.
But the food in Spain is phenomenal for sure. It's I love it there. And Spain definitely has sort of a national cuisine, the stuff that you'll run into anywhere, regardless of the region. And all of that stuff's great, but then there's also the regional specialties that vary quite a bit. Yeah, they're just really into food. I've never had a meal in Spain where we didn't talk about food throughout the entire meal. That's just it's how it's done. And in some places, in San Sebastian and in the Basque Country as a whole, cooking there is it's a sport. They're so intense about cooking, and there's all these kitchens, these public kitchens all over. So that's how people spend their social time too. And in the evenings, people go out and they get a drink or two, and then they go to a kitchen and cook together. They're crazy about it. And the ingredients are great, a lot of sun. Yeah, it's pretty wonderful. Ibiza in particular, there's orchards everywhere. So the whole island's covered in tamarind, which doesn't really get used much, but I love tamarind, and so I have a lot of plans for that. And then there's citrus and stone fruit and nuts and olives all over the island. There's still a lot of small farms on the more quiet part. So there's a lot of farms that are producing goat cheese and honey, and then they'll have prepared sort of specialties where they actually prepare food from what they're growing. And the orchards are everywhere. Just you can randomly stumble on an orchard that's just heavy with fruit, and yeah, it's pretty great. And then obviously there's some sardines and shrimp to eat too when you want to.
Oh yeah. Do you plan on being a chef for the rest of your life?
I want to keep teaching. I want to keep cooking. I'd like to. My goal is to cook a little more collaboratively, and being a chef is really full on. It's kind of an around the clock thing. There's always something that has to be dealt with. There's just so many moving parts to a commercial kitchen that it's hard to have a work-life balance as a chef. So I'm going to be a cook and hopefully a teacher as well. We're going to be doing some retreats. That's our business plan. So we'll be starting out, doing retreats at a couple of established properties that do those on the island, and then ultimately we're going to put something together for ourselves so that we can, do them where we live and sort of have a whole lifestyle and community out of it.
What do you think Esalen has changed most about you during how long have you been here?
I have been here for 10 years, since 2006.
Where do you see the most dynamic or obvious change that's happened to you?
There's been a lot, for sure. Definitely the opportunities I've had to teach the workshops have been really huge. I saw myself as being, pretty good at leading a crew and managing and sort of, explaining what needs to happen and then getting through it. But the quality of, teaching versus running something, that I didn't have when I got here. And so the first couple workshops I did, I was running them like a production kitchen. And a few people were really into it, but most of the people I could see were needing something else, and I started playing around with, just being more available for small talk and making more jokes and taking more breaks and really just kind of stepping back from my loyalty being to the food and the product and focusing it on holding space for these people to have a experience and realizing that everyone was there for a slightly different reason, and then people respond to different people have different styles of learning. And so being able to do that, deliver that program over and over and refine it and see how it was landing and get feedback from people. And there's something very special about Esalen too for anyone who's teaching here, regardless of what the content is, that people who come here for a workshop, they just drop in a way that is, it doesn't happen in other places. And so there's this openness and this trust that something really special is happening here. And so being able to build those skills in this environment has been really awesome. I'm super grateful for it.
What is your secret superpower? What's something that you're really good at that not many people know?
I love to clean things. I love to look at something that might seem clean and then spend some time on it and then realize that it wasn't clean at all. I like to just really detail things.
That's awesome.
That's my current superpower that I've just been discovering. We're moving out of this house that we've been in for a few years, and so I've been kind of detailing the different areas, and I like to get really into that. That's a pretty boring superpower.
It's cool though. It's pretty good.
Thank you.
Just to kind of wrap things up, I know that you have a lot of responsibilities still going on here. I wanted to ask you, what's something that you might miss about being at Esalen after having been here for so long?
I'm definitely going to miss being able to spend so much time in a group of really amazing and diverse and interesting people, and the ever-changing constellation of those people that I've gotten to spend this time with. The thing I love the most about Esalen is the way this place just throws together all of these people that just the crew in the kitchen on any given month. It's multi-generational and international and so multidisciplinary. There's people who are everyone here for the most part is in some big transition in their life where they wouldn't have headed here. And so there's people who are at the beginning of a career or just trying to figure out what direction they want to go and how they want to impact the world. And then there's people who are retiring from a career and wondering what they're going to do after that. And there's people who are changing careers. There's people who are grieving or looking for the strength to make a big change in their lives. And there's people who are here, working through some trauma that's been holding them back their whole lives, and they have an expectation that something really big is going to happen. And that's who we build our team from each month. It's pretty amazing, and that's really, that's what I'm going to miss, is learning who everybody is over that first few days and always being surprised. Washing dishes together and tearing lettuce and chopping vegetables and sweeping the floors and holding hands in a circle and, doing the sort of transparency and the honesty and the really deep, authentic sharing and experiencing of people at work. I plan to do that I plan to do that in my life, but to get to do that at work, it's pretty great.
Well, thank you, Phillip Burrus, Executive Chef. Thanks for your service, and I really appreciate you taking the time out to talk with us.
Thank you. It's been my pleasure. Thanks so much.
Thank you for listening to Voices of Esalen. Today's episode was produced in conjunction with Cheryl Franzel, Geraldine Hess, Lori Putnam, Shannon Hudson, and Ian Golden. Our music is by Nico Holloman. To hear more episodes, search for Voices of Esalen on iTunes and please subscribe. Or find us on the web at esalen.org. That's ESALEN.org. All of our episodes are archived there. Until next time, be well.